All right. Well, I think we have most of who we're going to have today. We've got almost a full house of who we had registered, which is great because I feel like Zoom fatigue. People are, it's real. So again, thank you for showing up. I will go ahead and introduce Chandel Clutter with Sticker Giant. She's the chair of the Nexus Young Professionals, just to introduce that committee to you all. Chandel.
Thank you, Karen, and for your entertainment as we waited. Yeah, I'm the chair of Nexus Young Professionals. We are only about 2 years old. I think this is our second year now. And we organize and host the like educational sessions like this, networking mixers, usually in person, which we're looking to bring back later this year. I don't know, Karen, if you want to drop the link to the survey for us to fill out. Maybe later at the end of this. So there we go. We also host different volunteer opportunities, and we have a book club hosted by Jen, who is also on this call. So if you're interested in joining the book club, reach out to her, Karen, or I. Yeah, and that's us. And we're young professionals. So typically ages 21 to like 40 are our audience. So, but we welcome everyone.
Great. Thank you so much, Chandel. And I did put the survey from the young professionals, just asking anyone that you don't need to be a member of the committee to just have an interest in the young professionals networking group at the Chamber. We were just surveying the over 100 contacts that we had over the past 2 years about what you're looking for from a young professionals group in Longmont. And networking is a big piece of that. So we are really looking at bringing that back, hopefully maybe as soon as June, depending on local guidelines and comfort level from folks. So take a chance to fill out that survey so that we know what you are looking for in a young professionals group in Longmont. And without further ado, I'll introduce Scott Cook, the CEO of the Longmont Chamber, who will introduce our host for today, Adrian. Scott.
All right, great. Thanks, Karen. And thank you everyone for being here. Our Young Professionals program, I think, is one of the most important things that we do here at the Chamber. We love grooming and preparing our next leaders in the community, and I think the Nexus program is one of the best ways that we can do that. Chandel mentioned that Nexus has been around for a couple of years. We've had a Young Professional program going back for a number of years, and I actually had a role in starting that. And I said a number of years. I have aged out of the program now, but much to my dismay. So anyway, I'm glad though that I can occasionally jump in here and join you guys as CEO. I guess that's my right as CEO, to still pretend I'm young for a bit and join the Nexus program. So thank you. I've known Adrian for a couple of years. I really enjoy his company. He's a great entrepreneur. We've talked a little bit, he and I, about his past and his work that he's done in the past. He lived in London for a while and things like that. So one of our great leaders, young leaders here in Longmont. So he is the CEO and the founder, or one of the co-founders of Contact Mapping. And Adrian recognized an opportunity to take the principles of contact mapping, which were actually pioneered by his father. And if you haven't met his dad is fun. Like, you will be laughing.
Way more fun than
me. What's that?
Way more fun than me.
I don't know. The two of them in the room together it's fun. So, but anyway, Adrian just took those principles and infused it with technology to make it easier for people in any industry to achieve success and in connecting with other people in their lives. Prior to Contact Mapping, Adrian spent 7 years at Rackspace, where he led the finance function for all of Rackspace operations outside the US. He lives now in Longmont with his wife, Callie, and they have 3 children, 9, 8, and 4. So please help me welcome Adrian. And with that, Adrian, I will turn it over to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Scott. Thank you, Chandel and Karen, and thanks to all of you for being here. I love Longmont. It's such an honor to get to come and hang out with my people, to get to be a part of this community. And so thank you so much for having me. And Karen, when she opened up, she said a word or a little phrase that I think we have all become familiar with now over a year of being trapped in our homes and all of the craziness that we have gone through. It actually really freaked me out when we crossed over the 1 year barrier. I remember the day that it all sort of locked up last year, I was like, I'm going to join a softball team. And so so my first softball game was that night. And I get the call from St. Vrain School District, because we have young kids, saying school is canceled. And I like call the guy on the softball team. I'm like, are we having this softball game? And he's like, they haven't canceled. So I like show up at the softball game and everyone just looks like this deer in the headlights. And I had practiced hitting a softball, but it didn't really occur to me to practice throwing or like playing catch. And it was an absolute train wreck. And thank God for this pandemic, because it just got me out of being the world's worst softball player. So I am pretty good at connecting with people. I'm evidently terrible at softball, but I'm a proud Long Monster, and it's great to be with all of you. So thanks for having me. I really want this to be super energetic and interactive. I was talking about Karen's little phrase that she mentioned, which that phrase is Zoom fatigue. And we have all felt it, but here's what I'll tell you. Zoom fatigue is a function of doing Zoom wrong. If we connect and if we bring energy and if we do this the right way, there should be no such thing as Zoom fatigue. And we know there is, because the reality is that so much of the interaction that we have on Zoom or Skype or Teams or whatever is not very interactive. It's not very energetic. We're not having fun. But let's suspend that concept for the next hour. Let's create interaction, let's create connection, and let's have fun. So that is the intention that I want to set. And one of the principles that hopefully you can use in your companies and in your own settings as you go out and carry this forward is a concept that I learned from a guy named Chad Littlefield. And that is what I like to call connection before content. So before we go into principles or ideas or any of this stuff, I want us to connect together. And so what I want you to do is I want you to use the chat liberally, please, as we're talking. And so I don't mind, I'm going to, as best I can, be really present here, but I want there to be chatter and conversation and maybe even heckling, I don't mind, happening over here in the chat. That's totally cool with me. And what I want you to do, here's my little guideline, is that if there's something that you want my attention, this is the only time that I ever ask for this, is the only time I ever want for this. This is my one time where I'm gonna give you permission to proverbially shout at me. And so the way you can proverbially shout at me is I want you, if you want me to catch the attention of what it is because you're asking me a question or you're telling me that I have a nose hair or whatever, put it in all caps over there and I will read those things. But just, I want to see a flow of conversation and connection happening as we're going along today. And I'll pull from that a little bit, even some of the things that are not in all caps, and we'll make this a conversation. So what I'd like to do first, I'm going to give you a second, but I want to know your name. I want to know what you do for work. And I want to know your favorite place that you either maybe can still go out in Longmont, or maybe you can't wait for things to finally properly open up so you can go out in Longmont. So it might be your favorite taco place. It might be your favorite coffee place. It might be your favorite place to go out for a beer or a drink, whatever that is. So name, what do you do? And what is your favorite place in Longmont to go out? So I want to blow it up in the chat. Let's see some answers. And I will share my somewhat recently discovered favorite local gem while you're doing that. So our offices for contact mapping are at 17th and Terry, so just west of Maine. And there is a taco place that I drove by, I don't even know how many times, that I finally got around to popping into at like 15th in Maine, I think, called Blue Corn Tacos. And so if you have not been to Blue Corn Tacos yet, oh man, that place is so good. So that is my new favorite spot. And I'm excited to learn a few of yours. Wibby is amazing. Please, thank you, Chandel. any of you, it will, you got sometimes just kind of take an edge off a presenter like me. So please feel free to have the alcoholic or non-alcoholic beverage of your choice. Feel free to share what that is. I love that. So we got Wibby. Wibby's so cool, right? I love that place. Longmont Liquors, dig it. Pump House, yes. Chick-fil-A, I love it. What else we got here? Oh, Cyclops. I won money playing trivia at Cyclops. That's like, again, something that never would have happened. That was actually like one of the last restaurants that I was able, like right before it all hit. That was a shining achievement in my life. So that's awesome. I love it. Natalie, you just moved to Colorado. All right, Natalie, I want to know, you got to let us know where you moved from, but welcome to Longmont. That's super cool. Glad to have you here. Wibby and Left Hand, we have great beers. Hefes for margaritas. I love that. Sunset Pool and Golf Course. There we go. I love it, Scott. All right, awesome. So I want to hear about you throughout this conversation and experience. And I'm going to scan through here just a little bit and look. So we got a bunch of sticker giants, which is awesome. I love your company. You guys just you make awesome stuff. You have awesome people. I love your podcast. I love your product, like everything. Sticker Giant is just such a gift to this community. So that's really cool. The movie theater. I miss movie theaters. Man, it makes me so sad. All right, so I'm just scanning through a couple of these as well. Edward Jones, awesome. So I want to really make this powerful, and I'll tell you right off the bat that I love connecting with people. It's what I have made my life's work is focused on connecting with people. But I will be the first to say that I don't have all the answers, that part of the magic of what has happened for me in my life and that I like to bring to others is a function of that the magic is out here. The magic exists inside of the cross connections that we make. And so I am here as much to learn from you as hopefully you're here to learn from me. I think that we are going to learn from each other, and we're going to create something that is powerful together. And so for those of you who did fill out the survey yesterday or today, thank you so much for doing that. And what was cool is there was a mixture of what came back in terms of what you're looking to learn. But the first place set of votes was talking about career development. And so that's what we're going to talk the most about today. We'll talk mostly about career development, and then we'll talk a little bit about how to sort of growth tactics and how to, as we continue to be in a world where our businesses are impacted to varying degrees by the fact that the world is a different place since March of 2020, how there's some new creative things that we can do to extend ourselves and grow beyond. And so thanks for keeping these flowing, and I'm not keeping my promise. I'm letting myself get squirreled over there. So I'm going to stay over here and I'm going to stay focused. But if you have questions, if you have comments, if you have something to add, please do one of two things liberally. Feel free to throw it all caps in the chat, or definitely either raise your hand like this, or you can click the little raise hand button, and I'm gonna call on a few of you, and we'll have some conversation in a way that I think will be fun and that will be interactive. And so for those of you who are up for it, I would love to have my voice not be the only one heard today, for sure. So let's first talk a little bit about career development. And so for those of you who are already active on social platforms in a business sense, I would love to hear in the chat, where are some places where you are spending the most time trying to develop your personally as a professional online, or trying to grow your business online? So we'll roll those two things together a little bit. But is it LinkedIn? Do you hate LinkedIn and just feel like it's a total, I can't figure out what to do here, people are posting weird stuff? Is it, are you a Twitter person? Are you using some other more interactive platforms? So where are you investing your energy, either to grow and learn as a professional, to connect with other people as a professional, or to maybe market your business as a professional? So just would love to see kind of where this crew is investing and spending time already. So throw a couple things in the chat if you would on that. But I'm gonna share some ideas with you today on some things that I have seen work. And I think all of those platforms, you know, wherever you are, I think there's great stuff happening on LinkedIn. There is a lot of not great stuff happening on LinkedIn, as I think we have probably all been on the receiving end of at various points in time. So I think any platform, you're going to see that happening. So here is another question. Google My Business, that's awesome. I'd love to know if anybody's playing on Alignable, and that's one that I have not, or if you don't know what Alignable is, that's awesome too. I have not been able to figure that out. It is very localized. So if you haven't heard of it and you are a hyper local business, it might be one worth figuring out. I have definitely had an interesting, it's been hard to navigate. So anyways, I'd love to learn from you if you are having luck on Alignable, because I've yet to crack the code there. TikTok is awesome. I am addicted to TikTok, not as a creator, but it is that is a bottomless rabbit hole of wild, you know, man, people are incredibly creative. So, okay, I see a lot of LinkedIn, a little bit of Facebook, and hardly using social media a lot less these days. Okay, cool. Has anybody checked out any of these more sort of connectional platforms? So has anybody spent any time on Clubhouse yet? Would love to hear if anybody is spending time there. Would also love to know if you let me know if you're like, I don't even know what Clubhouse is, or I've heard of it, but that's about it. Would love to know that. And there's a second one that I'm going to show you actually a little bit later, called Lunch Club, that I think is a great place to connect with people. So I'd love to know if anybody is already playing there. Clubhouse is wild. So those are a couple of areas that I think there's some opportunity to connect and to grow, and to maybe get connected to some people from a career perspective that can help you to grow. So awesome. Thanks for sharing that, just to kind of get a sense of the temperature of the room. So here's a couple of principles that I want to share about how to create value inside of your career and in developing your career on social media and just on online platforms. So I think there's a couple of different angles and a couple of different ways that you can take this in order to be able to have a better experience and start to make more powerful connections through the online world. One is to begin being more intentional about creating content on your personal social media, whether that's LinkedIn, whether that's Twitter, whether that's Facebook, but that is beginning to brand, or I actually don't even really like that word brand, because it feels kind of like high-minded, or I need to like figure out what my brand is or whatever. Really what it is to just begin showing up as somebody that has value to offer on these platforms. So, you know, Mackenzie's Edward Jones, I know obviously, not obvious maybe to everyone, but I know, you know, when you're in financial services, there's a lot of restrictions on what you're able to post about certain things. And there's a lot of things that are sort of that are put behind you. But here's the thing, no matter what you do, you know, even in the case of that, right? Mackenzie is highly restricted maybe on her ability to talk about, you know, offering investment advice or things that could be construed as investment advice on social platforms without going through compliance. But she knows all kinds of things that are relevant to growing a practice, relevant to connecting with customers, relevant to how to go about, you know, being an entrepreneur, how to go about, you know, acquiring and finding new clients in a time where you can't do it in traditional ways, especially for an Edward Jones that has historically relied on a very sort of belly to belly kind of a way. You know, there's thousands and thousands of people out there in the world who are maybe wondering the same things or struggling with the same challenges that Mackenzie or anyone else here on the call, and I hope it's okay that I'm using you as an example, Mackenzie, just as kind of a concept here. And I'd love if you want to jump in and share your experience. But it's that idea that even if you're, no one ever shows up and like bestows upon you, okay, you are now an expert. You are the one who is worthy of talking about these concepts. Like everybody is figuring it out. And I think especially for us as young professionals that, maybe don't feel like our title bestows that upon us, or don't feel like our number of followers on XYZ social platform has bestowed that upon us. Like the reality is that those are all outcomes that are a result of taking action or acting as if. And so you have value that you can contribute that are maybe even things that you go, well, nobody would want to know that, or nobody like that. That's so obvious. Well, that's what makes you the expert in that one little thing, is because it's obvious to you and it's not obvious to a lot of other people. And so, Mackenzie, I don't know if you, I don't want to force you to share, but I'd love to hear what you have been doing, and maybe we can use that as a little bit of an example of how you have been connecting with clients and finding new ways to connect with clients when some of the ways that are traditional to your industry are not being allowed for you.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. I've been struggling with content creation, and it's actually been the top of my mind. Like, I want to post something on LinkedIn that's going to engage people. I can't post investments. I can't post about, very specific information, but I've spent the last year onboarding clients virtually, onboarding clients through LinkedIn. And I've actually learned so much just through trial and error. And I don't know why I've never thought about that. Like, well, maybe some of the people who I've been connecting with are also interested in learning how to meet somebody virtually and ask for, a meeting over Zoom. So thank you. That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah. And what's so cool is like, you already did the hard part, right? You figured out, you did the work of learning all this stuff. And now it's your opportunity to begin to reap the benefit of that from a career perspective and from a recognition perspective, maybe by your peers, whether that be an Edward Jones or, all of a sudden, somebody for, not that you're looking to move or anything, but, like it certainly wouldn't be a bad thing for, the XYZ, somebody at Stiefel to call you on the phone and say, hey, I'd like to take you out to lunch or what, like that. I think it gives us increased confidence. It helps us to realize our value in the marketplace as we start to put it out there. And one of the mistakes that I'll say that I made, I heard from people. I spent, as Scott said, I spent most of my career before starting contact mapping at a company called Rackspace, a tech company, and I was in finance, and I just didn't see any reason to like put myself out there in that way. And when it came time to figure out what I was going to do next, I actually didn't, the moment of starting contact mapping, this is a long story, but it was not, I didn't realize that I was about to start a company. As often these things do, it came to me rather than me sort of going, okay, I'm going to start a company now. And so I was like considering, what am I going to do next? And I was realizing, well, like, I don't have, besides my resume, like I don't have this like body of work out there in the world for anyone to see. And it's like, yeah, having a good LinkedIn profile or having a nice resume, like that's great. But like, how much better is it when people are like, oh man, like, Christina, she is up to like all this cool stuff. Like, I don't even need to see her resume because I have already seen that she is accomplishing all these things. And she's like, like she's working out loud for others to see in a way that that I'm already seeing the value that she could bring to my organization. And so beginning to cultivate that and just taking that little bit of extra time to think about what are the pieces of what I'm learning or what I'm doing in my day-to-day job that I might kind of take for granted, but that might be totally non-obvious to other people, maybe in my profession, or people who are earlier in their, this comes naturally to me now, but man, when I was, straight out of college, or when I was in my first, when I was first getting going in this career, like no one, I had no clue. Like I was totally fumbling all over myself. I didn't know this. And so maybe it's that you can be helpful by sharing some of those insights to people who are just earlier on in the same journey as yours. So I'd love to, if anybody has anything that they are doing or have experienced that's kind of in that realm of beginning to sort of work to share what you're doing proactively, or any questions or ideas, I'd love to, I'll kind of pause there, and just, if anybody has anything that you'd like to throw out there, I'd love to hear it. Hey, Natalie, yeah, go ahead. Hey, Natalie, I see you unmuted, but I still can't hear you, at least. Uh-oh, yeah, we still can't hear you. All right, why don't you, I'll let you mess with things for just a second, and then we can try again, or feel free to throw it in the chat as well. I'd love to hear it. John, I see you unmuted. Did you have something you want to share?
Yeah, I found that social media can be really slow. So it's a good idea. I believe that's a good idea, to deal with social media and to continue posting, but keep moving in any direction you can think of. I think it's important to not just stick with one kind of venue like social media. It's a good idea to kind of keep your diversity as you're going forward. But social media is also something that can discourage you. I think you should really, look at that slowness and remember that it's going to be slow, and always kind of get up every day ready to do more. It goes so slow that it can slow you down almost, or make you feel like you're, not making any progress. So I would just say, get up and keep working at it. Don't give up.
Yeah, no, I think that's so true. And, it's kind of like that saying that, like, the best time to have planted a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today. Like a tree doesn't grow overnight. Like, these things don't happen. And so one part of it, totally to your point, John, is like keeping yourself diversified, because you're like, it isn't going to be an immediate, it rarely is that sort of immediate return. And I think the second thing is going, okay, if I do start, especially like, maybe I'm really like, I'm happy in my job, I'm kicking butt in my job right now. Like, I don't need the next thing right now. But if I can just start sort of dripping that out there, and then now I do have that in place, that's going to really set me up for success when the next thing comes. But I totally agree. It's a part of the strategy. It is not the whole thing by any stretch. So I love that. And Natalie, thank you. I think that's so great. And my favorite, so two things that you said that I love. So Natalie said she sets up 15-minute quick chats via LinkedIn to connect with people from her undergrad, from local area, or just people that she is interested in, even when she's not looking for a job. And so I love that you're looking for that commonality. I think that's awesome. Like, anytime somebody from my alma mater reaches out or whatever, like, it's like, oh, like instantly we're going to have something to talk about. I'm always going to take that meeting. So that's a great place to spend time. But I'm a big fan of the 15-minute meeting, because I think so often, it's like, oh, we're all starved for time. And so getting into that habit of like, oh, well, like 15 minutes, like that's a small ask. And if we can really make a connection, even just in that 15 minutes, that can be something that can be the spark where it's like, oh my gosh, like we need an hour, you're amazing. Or, oh, it's only 15 minutes and, you're a nice person and, wish you the best. But it's like, it's a low risk. So I really like that. That's awesome. Anybody else want to add anything before we jump into the next thing? Awesome. So here's the next piece that I will talk about around career development that I think can be helpful. And especially as maybe you're more shifting into that place of like, either I am actively looking for my next thing, or I'm just starting to think about that it's kind of time to be starting to just put some things out there. A consistent theme that I am seeing out there in the marketplace, that I'm hearing from people that are really winning and going after some incredibly sought after jobs, is that so often those jobs never even really get posted, or they only sort of get posted, but there was somebody had the inside track, and the way that they got that inside track is that they were offering value to the person who was, ultimately the hiring manager or somebody who is in leadership at that company before there was ever even a job or whatever out there. So there's a guy out there who I really like. If you're a Twitter person, there's a guy named Jack Butcher, and he runs a community called Visualize Value. And it's kind of focused on creators or sort of it's entrepreneurial focused. But he has this concept that I love. It's called the permissionless apprentice. And so basically the idea of the permissionless apprentice is that I am going to find someone who I admire or look up to in either the field that I'm already in, or in a field that I'm looking to enter, or a company that I'm super interested in. And I'm just, they're out, I have found them because they're out there, sharing content, sharing their wisdom, sharing whatever. And I can find a way to either go and add value by taking some of the concepts that they're out there sharing and assimilating those and creating, a summary or a guide or a tweet storm or whatever that is sort of distilling their content down into something that is interesting and that is digestible, and sharing that out into the world, which is highly likely to catch that person's attention. Or being somebody who is out there raising their hand and sort of identifying, hey, there's a need, you're doing a podcast, and I noticed like your podcast is awesome, but like you don't have an opening, it'd be super cool if you had an opening reel. Like, what if you had, like a couple of like, like a montage of like some really awesome quotes that have come from your previous episode. And so there's this thing that plays at the beginning. And so like, what if I said, hey, this is what I want to create for you. And I'll do it for free. I'm a big fan of the podcast. That's just an example, but like, what's something where you're already spending time consuming this person's content or following along with what they're up to anyway. You're like, oh man, like, maybe they feel like, maybe it feels to you like, oh, they're way, this company or whatever is way out of my league or whatever that might look like, but you're following along anyway. What if you invested just enough time to identify a place where you could add value and contribute to them? Another similar idea is that, maybe you work in marketing and you're seeing somebody out there, like the substance of what they do is awesome. And you're like, man, like more people should know you. Like there's, there's just a little bit of a missing link where the substance is all there. But I noticed that like I signed up for this thing and I got like this email and it was like, it was kind of like, wasn't much there. And like, that's probably why a lot of people are falling off. And so like to go to that person and be like, hey, hope it's like, this is who I am. This is what I'm up to. Hope it's okay. I noticed this. And I think if you made this change to your business, it would make a huge difference to the amount of people that convert. Hope that's okay. Just want to say thanks for everything that you're doing. I really appreciate you. Adding that little bit of value, leaders and people who are, running businesses and trying to accomplish a million things, if somebody sends you that kind of a insight and we're willing to put the work into offering it proactively, I'm going to find a seat for you. Because if what you offered is valuable and you did that proactively, if I'm hiring, I'm like, go and find, like, connect to this person right now, or even to the point of, I'm going to find a place for this person. And so there's such a huge, this is where I think the shift online has created so much opportunity, is that you have unlimited ability to be able to find somebody who you think, who you admire, and to be able to just create that burst of connection as a result of offering value without expecting anything in return. And the law of reciprocity And just the fact that they are going to be so appreciative of you having done that, they're going to naturally look to connect you to opportunity, whether inside their company or whatever. They're going to look to reciprocate, because that's how we're hardwired as human beings. You almost don't even have to ask for it, because it's just going to naturally come about. So those are some things that I have seen where, whether it leads to a mentorship opportunity where you're suddenly, having an inside track and an inside conversation to somebody who is, way more accomplished in your field than you are, that you now have an opportunity to be mentored by, or it opens up that next job opportunity, or whatever that is, that there's tremendous value that can be created just by you offering that, going out of your way to offer that value first. So has anybody played around with doing anything like that? Any experiences there, or any color that anybody else would like to add to how that could play out for you individually? Yeah, Karen.
I just have a somewhat of a question, less of an example of actually doing that, because the scenario described just comes across to me as like that could backfire so quickly. Anyone else? I was kind of like, it kind of played into, I think, a dialogue that happens at least a lot for my generation, us millennials, of these like overly opinionated, they haven't earned the street cred yet to say something that like totally backfire. I'm being like, hey, just wanted to point out something you could be doing better with your company. Just wanted to let you know. I think it, like what you said, like it has to be valuable, and the intent with that really matters. Like if your goal is just to try and get a foot in the door, they'll probably see right through it. So I was just wondering if you could give like an actual example of that, like this specific thing was said and this landed that person a job because they were like, oh yeah, that was a fantastic insight. What are you doing in the next, rest of your career? Do you have an example of this like actually working?
I like that. That was like a very rom-com way of putting it. Like, what are you doing with the rest of your life?
Do you want it to be here? Yeah.
No, first of all, thank you for surfacing that. I think that's really, really good. And I think there's totally that fine line between entitled, petulant, Gen Z, whatever stereotype versus somebody genuinely adding value. And so I think the first part of that is to be genuine in it, right? So if it is only a matter of just trying to get a foot in the door and it's contrived, we know we're so intuitive as humans that it's very hard for that not to show through. And it's not that there's anything wrong with it being, I genuinely want to contribute value to you, and I also hope it turns into something, because wouldn't that be amazing? Like there's nothing wrong with that at all. But if it's like, hey, this is basically just a manipulation in hopes of getting something for me, I think if energetically that's how it is for you, somehow it will come through in the work. So specific example, a friend of mine, Kate Volman, is a coach, and she basically runs the coaching company that was started by a best-selling author. And so some of the example I already shared actually is based on her actual experience. And so basically what would happen is, so she read, and actually, oh man, I need to introduce her to you actually, Karen, because she worked in a chamber in Florida. She worked for a chamber of commerce. And so she loved this author. She brought him in to speak to their chamber. And she was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And she ends up leaving the chamber and going on to work in, I think started her own marketing agency, or worked in a marketing agency, and was, in the space of helping authors. And so she kind of continued keeping tabs on this guy. And, she just felt like, relative to how great his books were, that he was kind of in obscurity. And she didn't necessarily say that like that would come across kind of not very nice, but she was like, I think that you should be like up there with Malcolm Gladwell and these kind of people. And, here's an idea that I think might be helpful for, like, here's an idea that I think could be helpful for you. And like once a quarter, she would send him an idea. And so, full transparency, this goes back to John. It wasn't the first time she did it that this paid off. So she said she would send, like, I think she said about once a quarter, she'd send him an idea. And it took about 3 years, and he would, sometimes he wouldn't respond at all. A lot of times, I guess this guy is like super brief. And so he'd be like she would send him like a few paragraphs and he would respond, "Thank you," nothing else. And so, but she kept at it. She was like, I genuinely think this, you know, and it wasn't as though this was the only egg in the basket, because she had no clue where this was going. But she would, you know, he would pop up on her radar screen. She was proactive about staying on top of it. And once a quarter or so, she'd send him a note. And after like about 3 years, she got a note back saying, "Hey, can you, like, let's have a conversation." They have this conversation and he goes, "You're like, thank you. I've appreciated these. I have implemented some of them." I think she could probably see that some of it would show up in what he would do. But he said, I had this book thing. I want to start a coaching company and I want you to run it. And he basically pulled her in, and they started the company together that she now runs on his behalf. They're partners in this company. And it was literally a direct function of having done that with an aim to add value and contribute without, and I think maybe this is the other piece that is an important distinction, is like, what I'm not talking about is you had a typo in that email that you sent or whatever. Like, it's not about like catching them doing something wrong that was like just a stupid mistake. It's more about like, is there a place where I could contribute value to your strategy, or to maybe an unidentified market, or, you know, how you could sell more to people like me. Like, these are the sort of things where maybe you could offer value that they weren't already thinking about, that opens up the world for them. So I hope that makes sense. I'm just reading what Julian had to say. Yeah, that's exactly. I love that, Julian. Like, Julian showed up. He was able to contribute value, and that sort of turned suddenly into this new set of opportunities. And so I think in both the online world and in the real world, the physical, you know, wherever, like, just that sort of, that essence of giving first is incredibly powerful. I am doing a really bad job of managing time. I can't believe it's already 4:45. So I'm going to speed up a little bit. Hopefully it's not because I'm just like droning on, but I want to cover a couple of other things, and I do want to give us some time to connect together again at the end. So thank you for bearing with me, and hopefully it's helpful. So the last thing, and actually I'm so glad that you asked that question again, Karen, because I think the other piece of the puzzle that was the last thing I wanted to cover about career management ties into that, right? So the secret sauce, and I think the thing that is missed by the overwhelming majority, and is thus the kind of secret that is hiding in plain sight for you to have a tremendous edge on everybody else in the world, is what Kate did differently, is that it was not a one and done. She created a habit of keeping her network alive and warm through having a structure that allowed her to follow up with this particular person, but with others in her network on a quarterly or half yearly or whatever basis. And I think that that is one of the most important, powerful things we can do. So there's a concept, I actually don't know who is the person who is the actual person behind this, but there's a concept called dormant ties. And basically the idea is that we, like, your strong ties, so the people who are your inner circle, they are very, very powerful for you, but they are not necessarily the people who are going to open up new opportunities for you, because the fact that they are as much in your circle means that they're not exposed to that much stuff that you're not also exposed to, because you're just you're in too similar of a circle. Your dormant ties are people that are further out there. They're not as closely connected to you, and they're out there having all kinds of experiences and exposures and growth opportunities that you're not even aware of at all. But when you suddenly get this habit of periodically checking back in with those people and staying in touch and finding a creative way to stay in touch, that's a Harvey Mackay Ism, who's the author of Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty, which is one of the best networking books of all time. But finding that creative way to stay in touch, having these periodic checkpoints with your network, there's magic that occurs there. Because what happens is maybe there wasn't, they hadn't thought of you in 3 months or 6 months or whatever, and they kind of forgotten about you, and that's okay. But all of a sudden, up pops Genevieve, and she sends a note and says, hey, I know you love the Miami Marlins. I saw that whatever happened the other day. This is a terrible example. I have no idea if you like baseball and if you know anyone in Miami, but whatever, right? You find something and you're like, hey, this made me think of you, or I saw this, I thought of you, hope you're well. Doesn't have to be any more complicated than that, because you just re-entered yourself into their consciousness. You have loved on them, you've offered some small piece of value to them, and suddenly they go, oh my gosh, Genevieve, you'll hear this sometimes. I was just about to call you. They weren't just about to call you. I need to talk to you because this amazing thing is happening and you would be perfect for it. And I'm so glad that we're talking because this is whatever. And all of a sudden all these sort of things happen. So that sort of the spontaneity and the possibility that gets opened up through these little checkpoints that don't have to be anything big and heavy. You don't have to go and research something to find a way to contribute. But just find some little thing that you can use to connect with them that puts a smile on their face. That's basically your goal. Put a smile on their face. Tell them I tell everyone I love them. Tell them you love them. Tell them you were thinking about them. Tell them that tell them something funny that you remember about that time you did whatever together. Whatever it is, just that little thing that just puts a smile on their face, that encourages their day. Magic happens when you do that. And so creating a structure around how you do that is something that I think cannot be undervalued in life, in career management, in business development, in everything that you do. And so that's where the rubber meets the road. I truly, truly believe it. And so if we're not going to have time to kind of go into the how of that, but the how of that is a big part of what I do. And so if that resonates for you and you'd like to create some more structure around that, I'm happy to share more and would love to connect with anybody. We should all share our contact details here in the chat. So please do that actually as we're going along, just so we can make sure to stay in touch for anybody who's connecting together for the first time. And Mackenzie, that book was called Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty. And it's by Harvey McKay. But yeah, so anyway, so that's like who I am. That's what I'm about. And I'm great at creating structure around that in a really simple way. And so would love to have a conversation about that. But the last thing that awesome, thank you, Natalie. So the last thing that I want to talk about is a couple of new platforms that I just want to encourage you guys to check out. And because we're a little short on time, I'm going to spend just a little time there. And again, would be happy to talk more about these things after the fact. So the first one is a new platform called Lunch Club. So it's Lunch Club. I actually think they just got the .com. It's lunchclub.ai, and I think they now have .com as well. But this is it's a free platform, and basically the way that it works is you go on there, you create a little profile that talks about who you are. I think you connect your LinkedIn or maybe your Twitter, or you can do whatever. So you kind of create a profile there, and then it says like, who are you looking to connect with? And you can say, I want to connect with people that are in my field just to network. I want to connect with potential customers. I want to connect with potential investors. That you can kind of select what kind of connection it is that you're looking for. And then they have an AI system that goes and matches you up with other people. It's like an online dating site, but for professional networking. But you can, I think it's like 1 to 3 meetings a week. You can say how many you'd like to have. And they say, so it reaches out, it says, what's your availability? How many meetings would you like to have this week? And then it just pairs you up for a 45-minute Zoom meeting with somebody. And you end up having these like super interesting, you meet really cool, really interesting people. And so, maybe if some of what we talked about earlier is a little bit intimidating or overwhelming to think of, like going out there and putting yourself out there as, you know, so actively, or like initiating kind of like a cold outreach into one of these, you know, people who you consider to be influential or whatever. This could be a great place to start, where it's like just that warm intro, you know, they share the profiles ahead of time so you can kind of see what that person's about. And I have had so much fun connecting with people who I never ever would have met otherwise, and have been able to, you know, get some customers from that, have been able to connect with some really interesting people who I've just been able to learn from and learn from my own career about, and just had a ton of fun. So that's lunchclub.ai. Like I said, it's free, and just a great way from a career perspective. The second one is Clubhouse. So I know a few of you said you had been on there, maybe felt kind of overwhelmed and it's a little bit crazy and everything else. So Clubhouse is, it's unfortunately only for iOS currently, although Android, I believe, is like in the next 60 days or so. But basically what it is it's an online. It is an audio only Zoom call, basically. It's an audio only forum that is organized by topic. And when you go in there, basically what you're seeing is a list of rooms that have different topics, and the ones that you'll see are based on the things that you said you're interested in and the people who you follow. So it's similar to Instagram or Twitter. You follow people, and then it says, okay, you know, Scott Cook is in this room on, you know, how to network in a local setting. And, you know, Genevieve is in this room on, you know, cryptocurrency, and Natalie is, you know, whatever. It's all the different things. And so you could go, okay, cool. Like this is that, you know, oh, my friend's in that room, and then they're talking about this. And so you can go in there, you can listen, and then you have an opportunity to raise your hand, which brings you up onto the stage, and then you can ask a question and you can speak. But the magic of this is, again, that there's this connection happening where you're able to meet and then actually, like in the moment, have a conversation and a connection with people who maybe you never would have had access to, who you may, you know, even if they're not famous, people you never would have met, that you go, oh my gosh, like you're doing exactly what I want to do, and I had no idea that anyone was doing that, or that you existed, or whatever. And so I've had amazing opportunities to kind of find people who are up to the same kind of thing that I'm up to in the world, who we can grow together, we can learn from each other. And it has just been super, super rich. And so if you are interested in Clubhouse and you're not already on there, and you have an iPhone, I'll share my details in a minute. It's invite only. I have a bunch of invites, so I'd be happy to invite you and get you on there. It's a free thing, but you have to have an invite to get on. But secondly, we're actually doing a Clubhouse room tomorrow that runs from, we do it every Thursday. It runs from 3 to 5 Mountain. And if you want to just kind of come in and dip your toe in the water or learn a little bit more, ours is about how to connect both on Clubhouse and off Clubhouse. So it's kind of thematically similar to what we're talking about today, but would love to have you. So please do reach out to me, and I'll get you the details on that. And it'd be really fun to connect with you guys there on Clubhouse. So I know we are getting close to the allotted time. I do want to leave some time just for questions or for anybody to share anything that came to mind for you during the call. So I'll kind of pause there and give anybody the chance that might want to ask a question or share anything. Poor Karen, she's feeling so uncomfortable. She wants to fill the silence so bad. And if there's no questions, that's totally cool too. So no big deal.
My mouse is literally like hovering over the unmute button, and I'm like, don't click it, Karen, don't click it. And then you said something and I was like, I'll respond. No,
it's all good. I love silence. Awkward silence is one of my favorite things. So I am totally, totally comfortable with that. It does not bother me at all. I will leave you with this sweet tip that hopefully you have already found by now, but maybe you haven't. If you go to the bottom right of your screen on Zoom, if you're on your phone, you can't do this. If you're on your phone, you'll have to send me a note and I can send it to you after the fact. And I'm going to put my contact details in here right now. But if you're on a computer, if you hit the chat and then you go down to the bottom, there's these 3 little dots like that. There's a little button. next to where it says file. And if you click on that, you can save the chat. And that will let you grab all of those LinkedIn profiles and everything else that was shared in the chat today, and be able to actually go and connect with all those people without having to rapidly try to click on every URL before this thing goes away. So if you can, go ahead and do that. And if you can't, feel free. I'm putting my contact info in the chat right now, and would love to hear from you on anything, and would be happy to share the chat transcript with you as well. So if there's no questions, we can wrap up. And if there are, speak now or forever hold your peace.
How do I find, I've been on Clubhouse 1 or 2 times, very overwhelming. So how would I go about finding that room?
I will, if you send me an email or a text message, Mackenzie, I'll actually send you a direct link, and you can
Okay.
add it to your calendar and then go to it straight to the room tomorrow.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome, cool. Anybody else? Thank you all so much for having me. Oh, maybe, no, that was Mackenzie again. Thank you all so much for having me. I really enjoyed being with you. I really want to plug in. So Chandel, I need to get on the list. I probably already am, and I get too many emails, but I want to plug in, especially some live events. I'm like dying. So let's make it happen. And thank you all so much for having me. I really enjoyed being with you today.